What is going on? You have just landed on the one-stop shop on exactly how to code. If you watch this entire video, you are going to learn how to code. And don't worry, anyone can do this as long as you can function YouTube or TikTok or scroll through Instagram. If you can do all of that stuff, you can learn to code. And it's super important to learn how to code because in my opinion, you need to know how to read, you need to know how to write, you need to know how to speak, and from this day on, you need to know how to code because that's where all of these salaries are flowing. Look at this, entry level, top paying companies in the US, the people they pay the most are coders. You can see entry level, 261,000 per year, 250,000 per year, Instacart, Stripe, 237,000 per year. And that's entry level. Once you start this mission of learning how to code and you go up the ranks, that's entry level, 230,000. Now, I'm not going to guarantee this. It definitely depends on your location and how good you are, of course. But what I'm going to show you in this video is exactly how to code. And don't worry, you don't have to go to school for it. You don't need to get a master's degree. You don't need to be a mathematician. I'm just a regular dude. Like, I didn't know how to code before this. I wanted to automate my trading and remove all emotion from trading, so I learned how to code. And then now I can build a bunch of trading bots that trade for me 24/7, 365. So whatever your reason is, even if you don't have a reason now, as long as you can easily use these social media apps like Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever, you can learn how to code. It's all in English. I always joke to people because I'm learning Spanish right now, and Spanish has to be like 100 times harder to learn than coding is, simply because Spanish is a different language and coding is in English. So if you know English, you can absolutely learn how to code. And if you are speaking English as a second language, or if you think about people who speak English as a second language, it's way harder for them because first they have to learn English, or maybe that's you, but first you have to learn English, right? And then you have to learn how to code. So if you already know English, like whether you learned it as a child, you had to learn something, right? So a lot of people think that coding is so hard, but it's just another skill. Like, you had to learn how to speak when you were a baby, right? And you just learned because you were around people who were speaking. So just watch this video. Even if you don't do anything in this video, you just listen to it. If you watch it a couple times, you're gonna learn just like you learned how to speak because you heard other people speak, right? So I would recommend just watching this whole video. Everything I type, you should type. If you don't want to do that, watch it and just listen this time through. Get to know the process, and then the next time through, type everything. So we're actually going to do coding in this training here. You're going to learn absolutely everything you need to know, A to Z. Now, like I said, I'm an algorithmic trader, so I had a reason to learn how to code, but it took me a couple years to learn how to code, and it will not take you a couple years because I'm putting everything I know into this video. So there's really no other place to be right now if you want to learn how to code. Like I showed you, entry level is crazy at these companies. Year 2, year 3, it goes up and up, 340, 359, 435. Senior levels, 500,000, 400,000. So it's like, if this is something that you can learn, just like learning another language or learning to play a sport or learning anything, isn't it worth it? Yeah, so just stick around for this video and I'll show you exactly how. It's no different than learning any other skill. And my mission is to teach as many people how to code because I truly believe no matter what your skin color is, where you live in the world, if you grew up rich or poor, as long as you have access to a computer, you can code. And then if you know how to code, it's like knowing English, right? You either know it or you don't. And if you know it, then you can qualify for careers that pay you a lot more. I'm not guaranteeing you're going to get a career right out of this, but these are literally the salaries that Stripe pays and Instacart pays. And the only thing that's different between the people that are working there getting those salaries and you is they took the journey to start learning how to code. And like I said, I'm just a regular dude. Like, it's not hard. You don't need to be a mathematician. You don't need to get some Harvard degree or anything. Like, just don't listen to everybody else. Like, the people that say that it's so hard to code are other coders because they want to act like they're super smart or anything. But I'm just an entrepreneur. I did not know how to code a couple years back, and now I know how to code, and I'm going to show you everything here in this video. So just ignore all of the big talking developers out there that pretend like it's super hard. There's a lot of big words that coders tend to use, and that, for me at least, was the most intimidating part, because there's all these words that are thrown around, and when you hear a word in English that you don't know, it's intimidating. It's like, what? I have no clue what you're talking about. You must be so smart. But in reality, it's just like a set of 20 or 30 words that are used repeatedly in the coding language that you just have to learn. But like I said, I'm just a regular dude. Grew up, biking, skateboarding, playing sports, playing on my computer the rest of the time, sitting on my laptop, playing SOCOM and Zelda, big time gamer. So if you can learn how to play a video game, wow, you are already on your way to learn how to code and then unlocking just a great life, because you can code from anywhere. All I do is bring my laptop and I can build absolutely anything in the world now. Anything I can imagine, I can code. And I want you to get to that point, because my mission is to help as many people learn to code, because then it doesn't matter if you're in sub-Saharan Africa, as long as you have a laptop and Wi-Fi, you can learn how to code. And if you can learn how to code, that unlocks the whole world for you. Because look, Cruise or Roblox, they're just looking for people who know how to code. And of course, people that are good at it, so people who study it. But most of the population gets intimidated like I used to get intimidated. Right? It's scary. You think other people are so smart because they know how to code, but in reality, they just learned a little subset of English, a different type of English. If you know English, you can learn how to code. It comes down to that. And you don't have to be super smart. I promise you that. I promise you that. There's a lot of BS, a lot of big words out there. They try to be smart. But if you are good enough at scrolling YouTube, TikTok, then you can code. And I always joke about this, but it's so true. You're really becoming a professional Googler. Once you learn the basics that I will teach you all through this training, then everything else is on Google. If you run into a problem, you just Google it. And all of the answers are there. So you're really becoming a professional Googler today. And I'm gonna lean on Google just to show you how to Google as a coder. Yes, there's a ton of stuff I'm gonna teach you today, so take notes. But once you understand these core concepts, and you can make that mental shift of knowing that you are able to do this. I know you can do this because you found this video. That means you're technically advanced enough in order to code. And I'm so passionate about this because I truly believe if I teach this, I will help so many people unlock a new world of opportunities. Because think of it like this. If right now all of the tech companies were hiring people who knew how to write cursively or write in cursive, do you remember that when you learned how to write in cursive? It was a skill, right? You learned it in class, but before you didn't know how to do it. But then you learned it over the course of a couple weeks or a month or whatever it took. What if all the tech companies were just hiring people who wrote in cursive? Well, and they pay you 2x, 3x, 5x as much as regular people. You would probably go learn cursive, right? So it's just another skill that you can learn. And I know it's intimidating, but you just have to memorize a few things, and then the rest, you just depend on Google, and you'll become a professional Googler. So just sit back, relax. Everything I type, you go ahead and type, and then just watch this video again if you need to. But this is going to be A to Z, everything you need to know on how to code. And we're going to use Python. Python is a language that is very, very popular. And like I said, I'm an algo trader, so I'm automating trading strategies all the time. And I use Python pretty much. That's it. That's all I use is Python. That being said, once you learn one language, once you learn one coding language, you really kind of learn them all. Because every language is slightly different, but it's kind of like saying, hey, if you learn English, you'll probably be good in the UK, you'll probably be good in Canada, you'll be able to speak in America, you'll probably also be able to speak in Australia. So there's a ton of different languages, but I'd like to teach Python because that's what I'm good at. And hey, I'm able to pick up new languages just like that, because at the end of the day, coding is like English, and there's multiple types of English around the world. I would have no problem going to Australia right now. Yes, sure, the accent's a little different, some words are a little different, but that's how it is. And like once you learn English, you can travel like pretty much everywhere. Shoot, I could even go to like Hong Kong, right? And people speak English in Hong Kong. Sure, the accent's different. Sure, they probably pronounce things differently, but guess what? I could go pick up English in Hong Kong pretty easily because I understand English here. So that's the thing with coding, and that's like, I know you've probably heard like, oh, I could learn Python, I could learn JavaScript, I could learn whatever, I could learn Rust, I could learn Solidity. All of these languages are just alterations of one core language. Well, kind of. I'm just trying to keep it basic, and what I'm trying to say is if you learn Python, you'll be able to learn any other language that you need. And if you want to go get a job at some point and they're using a different language, like you learn Python in this video and then they require JavaScript, it'll take like a week or two to get used to the small changes there are between them. So like I said, you're just becoming a professional Googler. So let's strap in. I'm going to show you all of the things you need to know in coding, and I'll show you how to find the answer if you can't find it. Now, persistence is probably the number one thing. You know, you will get stuck every once in a while, but that's why we just go to Google and it's all there. It's all there. So here I have Google Colab pulled up. What is Google Colab? This is where we're going to code. A super simple way in order to code. What's going on down here in the bottom right of my screen? Like I said, I'm an algo trader. That means that I take my trading strategies, trading crypto for the most part, and I put it into an algorithm that I had to code. Now, it's gonna look intimidating. You can see all this code here. It's intimidating, right? But don't worry about it, because by the end of this video, you're gonna be able to build anything. If you wanna build algorithms to trade, sure, that you can do that as well. I mean, that's what I do. If you want to build an app or something or a website, you'll be able to do all this stuff. I'm going to teach you all the basics you need to know in order to get going in this video. So make sure to smash that like button, because I'm teaching this all for free, because I want to help as many people in the world as possible realize that you don't have to go to school to be a great coder. You just have to be persistent and resourceful. Who am I, by the way? I'm Moondev. I'm an algo trader, 100% self-taught. I taught myself because I wanted to automate my trading. Now you can see, like, this is a bot that's running here 24/7, and in the last 2 weeks, it's made me 13%. So I've been able to achieve my goal, and now I want to teach as many people in the world how to code, starting with you. So if you're excited, go ahead and tap that like button. You're going to be able to do this from anywhere in the world. You just need your laptop and Wi-Fi or a desktop, whatever. Now, some people ask if you can do this on mobile. I don't think it's there yet. There are some apps you can code on mobile, but I personally, especially for this training, I would say you need a laptop or a computer. So go to your computer or laptop if you have one. If you don't have one, I would love to be able to provide laptops to everybody someday, So just message me or get into the group or something. You know, obviously at this point, I can't just give you a laptop, but my mission is to help as many people around the world. I truly believe coding is the great equalizer. Simply because it doesn't matter who you are, where you're from, how much money your family has. You either know how to code or you don't. And if you do know how to code, you qualify for high-paying jobs, high-paying careers. If you don't know how to code, you have to go get some other career. So to me, it's the great equalizer, because once you know how to code, you unlock so many opportunities. And just think about this generations down the line. Like, what would it do for so many people in this world if they could learn how to code in the next couple months throughout this video and then go get jobs like this? This can change family lines. This is generational change here. So my goal is to just help as many people as possible. So let's just get into it. You know enough about me. You know my mission is to help as many people learn how to code as possible. I'm doing it here free on YouTube. So you can just tap that like button. I know this is going to be a long video, but there's a lot to learn. I'm packing 2 years worth of stuff into one video, so you can have it all here and you can start running after this video. So make sure to like and subscribe so you make sure to see this video again, right? Like, if you can't finish it all right now, you'll have to be subscribed in order to finish it. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go to Google and we're gonna type in Google Colab. That's C-O-L-L-A-B. This is where we're going to code. So click that, welcome to Collab. Create new notebook here. And you're ready to go. Now you can code. So I can type things in here, and this is where we're gonna start. So once you're at this page, we are going to start running Google Colab. I'm gonna close it because I already have a page open, and you can see here. Now, you can see, we're starting now, by the way, so smash that like button. You can see here that these words are in green. Now, if I hit play, this is running the code. Okay, so lesson 1. This is how you run the code. You usually hit play or run. You can see nothing happened. And that's because these words are in green. And that's because I put these hash symbols in front of them. Now, if you have a hash symbol or a hashtag in front of the words, then it's pretty much saying this is not code. Do not recognize this. This is just my notes. These are just my notes. This is not code. If the hashtag is in front of it, these are just my notes. So machine, don't worry about it. Don't do anything with them. These are just notes. So for example, I said learn to code in 2023, step by step. I don't want my machine to think that's actual code because it's not. So that's one way to what we call mark out your code. You mark out code by putting a hashtag like this in front of it. But then look, when I hit return and I keep typing, it turns white. That's because there's no hashtag in front of it. So put the hashtag in front of it, just like that. And that's how you mark out your code. Now, there's a second way to mark out your code, and that's by using 3 quotes on both sides. So you can do that and then put longer text here, and the computer will ignore it. Just like that. And if I hit play again, it's still going to say nothing because the computer ignores it. Now, a third way is just use single hashtags like this, or single quotes. Let's go ahead here. And I typically use single. It looks like here, actually. That's what they're gonna respect. So use single quotes on both sides, not double quotes. You can see down here it printed something, which is weird. But it will totally ignore it on most of these programs. So you can either use a hashtag in front or you can use the triple quotes. Now we're speaking of quotes. In Python, in coding, or in Python particularly, you can use quotes. When you're using quotes, they can be single quotes, like this, and words in here, or they can be double quotes like this. Now, I'll get to this later, but what I'm trying to say here is in Python, it doesn't matter if you use the single quotes like I just showed you, or the double quotes. Doesn't matter. Okay, now you know how to mark out code. Very easy to do. Put a hashtag in front or use quotes. Single or double. And you put the text inside. So that's your first lesson. That's how you go ahead and mark out code. I'm going to go super fast in this training. Now, what I want you to do is watch this training a couple times. So make sure to like and subscribe in order to see this video again. And you ask me, why do I have Google pulled up here? Because you're becoming a professional Googler. When you have a question, everything is on Google. So I'm going to pull up Google all the time throughout this course because I want to show you how to Google. Because when you're out there on your own and you don't have me showing you everything, sometimes you're going to get stuck. I get stuck all the time. I'm sure I'll get stuck somewhere in this course and I'll actually have to use Google. And it doesn't matter because you just have to know like the things I'm teaching you today, and then the rest is just on Google. So now you know how to mark out text. And I could have been like, oh, Google, how do I mark out text in Python? And just always add in Python if you're coding in Python. And that's what we're coding in. Learn how to code in 2023. Learn how to code in Python. This is Python. Just so you remember, this is Python. So what you do is you just Google it. Like if you want to ask, instead of me teaching you, if you forget this, I forget things all the time. All the time. You don't have to be a genius. You don't have to memorize things. Sure, there are coders out there that have been doing this for a decade and they memorize things, but don't worry about it. There's no pressure to memorize all this because look, everything I just taught you right there, I could have just said, how do I mark out text in Python? And it takes me over here, and this is the website you usually want to go to. So go ahead and write this down, Stack Overflow. Now you can see it's usually going to pop up in the top 3 results, but look at this. It shows me the exact answer. Now, look at this. Look how ugly this is. This is super intimidating. I was super intimidated when I got started. All this, like this, it's so much text. I don't even want to look at this. But you just got to get over that and just go with it and just read word by word. Because at the end of the day, it's all in English. You can ignore this because it's just like, it's a lot, right? And we can get to this later. Like, what is this code jumble? But at the end of the day, it's all in English. That's a D, then an E, then an F, then an ST, then an R, then an I, and a K. And this looks like a super in-depth answer. So it's not even there. So how do I mark out text in Python? You just Google it, and you can see there's tons of answers. Now, this might not be the right way to ask it. So I might have to say, how do I ignore text in Python? And there's a ton of answers. So the key really is what to ask. Now, this is such a basic thing that it's probably going to be kind of hard to ask. How to ignore comment lines when reading in a file. And one of the better ways, I think, to ask this question would be how to comment in Python. Because that's what we're really doing here, is we're commenting. We're commenting our notes. And you can see a comment in Python starts with the hash character. Right? So it's just all on Google. What I'm trying to get through to you is every time you get stuck throughout ever, in coding, it's not that hard as long as you know how to Google. And I know for a fact you're good at Googling. You're a great Googler. We're all great at Googling by now. And if you can Google well, you can get the answer. Look at this. I just found the answer to what I just taught. So let's keep on moving and let's pick it up a little bit, because there's a lot for me to teach you today and we don't have all day, but I want to make sure that you learn absolutely everything you need to know. So the number one thing, and the reason I'm spending so much time on this thing, is because the number one thing in coding, in my opinion, is being a good Googler. So whenever you want to Google, just put in your exact question. You can even add Stack Overflow just to get there. Like, for example, how do I create multi-line comments? This, he's asking it because he's asking in the wrong way. He's asking in a different language. And down here, the answer is this. Look, I don't know if you can see that. I should just make the screen a little bigger. This is a multi-line comment through two quotes. So all the answers are there. You just have to get to the point where you know the question to ask. So it's all on Google. Don't worry about it. Now you know how to comment versus code. Now I want to talk about printing. So how do I get something to print out here? If I run this again, you can see nothing shows. But printing is simply the act of saying, hey, computer, show me this. So I can say print, and do this with me, with everything. Just do everything with me. I can say print, and then I put these quotes in here, and I can say, hello, this is my first piece of code. And you can see here, this is how it goes. You type in print, then you put a parentheses, and then a quote. It can be a single or a double. Remember, I already told you that. It can be a single or a double quote. And then you put in your sentence. So, hello, this is my first piece of code. And then you put the quote again to close it, and then the parenthesis to close it. So whenever you use a parenthesis, you type it one time, and it makes both of them for you because it's required. If you have an opening parenthesis, you must have a closing one. Same with a quote. So you type it one time, it's going to make an opening one and a closing one for you. So that's another great thing about coding, is a lot of stuff is just done for you. So when things look really intimidating, like if you look at all this code I've written for my bot, it looks intimidating, but more than half of these words are just auto-populated for me. So let's go ahead and try to print this. Let's delete those. Now let's just say print, parentheses, quote, then your sentence. I said, hello, this is my first piece of code, then another quote, and then parentheses. Now if we hit the play button, look, it says, hello, this is my first piece of code. So boom, now you can see this. These are my notes. It didn't print out because the hashtags. And then here it says print, hello, this is my first piece of code. And that's your first piece of code. So huge congratulations. I'm telling you, this stuff is not that hard. Just type with me for the rest of this training and you will know how to code in Python, and you can absolutely crush it in whatever you want to do with this in your future. So that's how you do a print statement. A print statement is simply saying, hey, computer, show me this. Show me this thing. Because usually you can see if I remove the print, I can put like a sentence, call this a sentence here. Sentence equals that. And if I run this, it shows me nothing. But now look at this. I say print, and before I just had this sentence in there, but now I set sentence equal to sentence. I could say sentence. And now it will print something. Hello, this is my first piece of code. Now we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. I'll get to that later. But printing is pretty much saying, hey, show me something. Okay, so now you know how to print in Python, and that's your first piece of code. So congratulations. That's really, really awesome. And we're just going to keep on moving because we've got a lot to learn. And I just showed you a little something. It's called a variable. A variable is a storage box. So that's how I like to look at it. You have this box in your closet, right? And you store all your You store all your cables in that box. Well, next time you need a cable, where do you go? You go to your box. Okay, so let me type in box and say, hey, box equals, well, what's this box equal? Let's put quotes there, and it equals all my cables. Box equals all my cables. Now you can see a variable is just a storage box, and whenever you create a variable, you have to put an equal sign. So box equals whatever you want right here. Now we'll get to this in a bit, but it can be a string, which is a sentence, and that's what we did here. And I'll get to the other things later. So again, there's a lot of weird words in coding. I don't know why we don't just call them sentences, but they're called strings. So definitely write down your notes, string equals sentence, or sentence equals string. And you can see here, I wrote the code right here, and then I put a hashtag, pound symbol, and after this, it's gonna ignore this code. So what do you think is gonna happen if I run this code? Nothing, because I didn't print anything. So I have this variable, and a variable is just a storage box. And I put a sentence, and a sentence is called a string in Python for some reason. It's just called that, and in coding in general, strings equals sentence. Well, I set this variable, I said equals all of my cables. But it didn't do anything when I hit play because I didn't ask it to do anything. I just said, hey code, now you know box equals all my cables. And the code's like, all right, well, I stored it. Sweet, what do you want me, I mean, all right, I did my job. You hit play, I stored it, and I did my job. But why doesn't it show me it down here? Now, if you look back to our last note, printing is showing something. So we set this variable, which is simply just a box, a storage box. We set this variable to all my cables. If we wanted to see that, we would have to use print, right? Print. And I just type in print box, because box equals this, which is really equal to the same thing as this. I said print equals print box. That's pretty much the same thing as saying print this string, right? Because if I say print that string, it's going to print out all my cables. But watch this. If I say print box, box is equal all my cables. What do you think is going to happen? It's going to say all my cables again, because we just saved this string or sentence to this box. And a variable is just a storage box. Now look at this. I could say box 889 973. I could say anything else. I could say like chapstick equals Burt's Bees. And then watch this. I could say, okay, well, I want to take box 8793, and I want to put it in there, and guess what it's going to print? It's going to print this again. These names can be anything. They can be absolutely anything. They just cannot start with a number. So you can't put like a number at the start. But look at this. So I said print that, and it showed me this right here. Now, what if I said print chapstick? What do you think is going to happen? Let's print it. Well, chapstick, we set that variable, and remember, a variable is a storage box. You can have unlimited variables. Well, it prints, and remember, printing is just showing something. Well, we're printing chapstick, and chapstick equals Burt's Bees. So print chapstick, and then it shows us Burt's Bees. But what if we wanted to print both of them? Well, you just do this, print that, and then you hit play, and it says all my cables, Burt's Bees. So now you know how to print, you know how to use variables. Variables are just storage boxes. You know a little bit about strings. They're just sentences. So you're crushing it. Give yourself a big pat on the back. because a lot of people don't make it this far. This is too intimidating for most people, including myself. Like, I don't want to pretend like this is not intimidating. This was super hard to learn, but I'm trying to make this as simple as possible so you can learn it all in this video. So go ahead and just smash that like button and make sure to be subscribed in order to watch the whole video and all the future videos. But you're gonna learn everything in this video that you need to know to get started with Python from A to Z. So I'm really excited to keep on moving forward. I just want to congratulate you for getting this far. You know about variables now, you know about printing now, and you know about commenting. Now I'm gonna go ahead and let's move on to a new subject. I'm gonna go here and I'm just gonna hit down here. See here, I hit code. You see this little pop-up, and it's going to give me a new set, a new block that I can code in. Again, a weird word, block, but it's a new block that I can code in. This saved everything up here, and you saw how to print, how to do strings and variables. Now I want to go to a weird name, one of those weird words, Booleans. I have no idea why they're called Booleans, but they are. And this is what I say, like, this is why a lot of people do not learn how to code, because there's so many weird words and it makes it sound like you have to be so smart to do this, but in reality it's just English. It's just weird English. It's different English. Booleans are actually just true or false. So when you think Booleans, think of this weird old word that means true or false. So Boolean values are simply true or false. Booleans are types of, I'm gonna just say types of things to keep it basic, that are true or false. Now I want to give you some examples. Now you can type this code if you'd like, but here's an example. 3 is bigger than 4. So let's say bool equals, well, don't use bool because it's a word that is in Python. So let's call Boolean, no, let's call answer equals 3/4 and print answer. Now, first off, tell me this, is 3 bigger than 4? True or false? Well, I'm sure you know the answer, but let's hit play. It says false. 3 is not bigger than 4. And remember, a Boolean is just true or false. So since we said this variable, remember, a variable is just a storage box. Since we said this variable equals 3 bigger than 4, it's going to be like, no, bro. 3 is not bigger than 4. So it's false. So it just sets this variable to a Boolean. Now, this might be confusing. Long story short, Booleans, true or false. If you can just memorize that, make a note card or whatever, Booleans equal true to false. You just need to know that terminology. You already know how to print things. You don't really need this too much, but you're just gonna run into Booleans, that word. And like I said, it's intimidating because it's a big word, but it really just means true or false. Now, what if I said 30 is bigger than 4? What do you think is gonna happen here? Answer will probably change because 3 is definitely not bigger than 4, but 30 is. So 30 bigger than 4 is true. So now you know how to use Booleans, and let's just keep it moving because Booleans are super important, but now you know how to use them. So let's go ahead and jump into something else. I want to talk about numbers for a bit. Numbers are important. You don't need to be a math magician though. Numbers in Python. There's really 2 types. And type number 1 is a integer. And this equals a whole number. Super simple. So it's like 4, 5, 10, 12. A number that's whole, no decimal points. No decimal. Super simple. Another thing you just got to remember. Integer, weird word. It's a whole number, meaning there's no decimal points. 4, 5, 10, 150, there's no decimal points in there. Now, the second number is 2 is a float. Float. F-L-O-A-T. Another weird word, but at the end of the day, this is not a whole number. And then an example of this is like 54.4 or 67.79 or that number point blah blah blah, right? So if it has a decimal place, it's a float. If it doesn't have a decimal place, if it's a whole number, it's an integer. Now let's go ahead and prove this is true, and we can say type, and this is whenever you want to find out the type of something, you just type in type, and you can say 3, or there we go. And then remember, if I play this, it's not going to do anything for me. Well, actually it is, because we're on this Google Colab, and they make it even easier for you. So it does show you that it's an integer when you do type. I just want to prepare you for the next step of coding, which is not using this program. You'd have to put print here. So print and then type, and then you put in the number, and it shows an int, which is short for integer because it's a whole number. So I hit print, and it says integer. And it puts it in this weird stuff to make it hard, and like it's so hard to do, but in reality, that's your answer right there. Now, what if I put 3 point, all that? It would say float. Look at that. Now, what if I have this number, and let's make a variable called number, and let's call it 56.45. And what do you think is going to happen if I print number? It's going to print out 56.45. But what if I wanted to know what type is that? I would put in type and then put another column, parentheses here. And remember, if you have an opening parentheses, you need a closing one. So I have these ones, and then I have these ones. And don't worry about this too much. If this is getting too advanced, just stick with me and just type everything you see on my screen. Because like I mentioned at the start of the video, when you didn't know English, if you are living in an English-speaking country right now, well, you probably learned English by just hearing, your family members speak English or hearing the TV. So, even when this gets too advanced, don't stop. That's like the number one thing. As long as you're a good Googler and you're persistent, just don't stop. When I first started getting coding, a lot of this didn't make sense to me either. But the most effective thing I did was anytime I was learning, I would type everything on the screen. So I hope you can see everything. If you have any questions, please do let me know. I'll actually make this even a little bigger here. Oh, that's probably going to be too big. Well, we'll play with it for now at this size, and just so it's a little easier to see. But at the end of the day, if you ever get stuck, just type everything I type. And that's funny because we're talking about a different type of type. We're talking about typing everything I type. But if you ever want to see the type of something, hit play, and it should show me it's a float because it's 56.45. Now I want to show you one thing is, what if I want to turn that number into a float or into a integer? Turn floats to integers. Well, I would just say let's say number 2 equals int, and then you pass in number. Just like that. And then I could say print num2, and let's see what happens. You can see it just rounds it to the nearest integer. Because remember, integer is just a whole number, and float is a decimal point number, or not a whole number. So I went ahead and said, hey, number equals 56.45, but number 2 equals the number as an integer. So it rounds it down to 56. So now you know how to use numbers in Python. You don't need to be a super math genius. As you can see, I'm no genius at all, just a regular guy. And this stuff is super intimidating, but just keep typing it all out. And if it's easy for you, congrats, because like you're mobbing, and it's going to be super easy to learn all of this. And I'm just going to keep going because there's a lot more to learn. I still have Google up here. And remember, if you ever get stuck, just type into Google. So let's go here. Let's go to Google and just say, let's say, what types of numbers are in Python? And there is so many resources here, or there are so many resources here. You have integers, floating types. There's also complex numbers, but I don't even use those. But you can see all of it's here on Google if you ever have any questions. We can also say something like how to know if this or that. You get the point. Google is your best friend as a coder, and you're really becoming a professional Googler. That's my ongoing joke, and I will keep reusing that bad joke over and over again until you really understand that, like, just watch this video, learn everything I have to show you, and then from there you can Google everything else if you ever get stuck. And yeah, so now you know about floats, you know about integers. Those are the two types of numbers in Python. You know about Booleans, which is a fancy word for true or false. You know about variables, which is just a storage box, right? Put all my cables in this box 897, or I put Burt's Bees in this chapstick box, which is a variable. And let's just keep on moving because you're absolutely killing it. Let's talk about counting really quickly. Counting in Python. So this is just weird, and another thing you just have to memorize. But usually we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But in Python we count 0. In all coding, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So just memorize that. Instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we start at 0. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I make a variable, and let's call it counting, count equals fun. Now, if I wanted to access the first part of this word, if I hit print here, print count, it's gonna print all of count. But if I just wanted the first letter of count, I would put in 0. Because the first letter in the rest of the world, this is the first letter, right? F is the first letter. But in coding, it's the zeroth letter. And then if I wanted to print out like the U, count, I would just put these brackets here and I would say 1. Because if F is 0, then U is 1. So counting is just different in Python. Now, for example, if I had funny, let's have a longer word. Usually it'd be 1, 2, 3. If I wanted to get to the Y, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It would be 5 in regular world, but we're in Python world. We're in coding world. It starts at 0. So to print out the Y, I would say 0 is F, 1 is U, 2 is N, 3 is a second N, and 4 is Y. And I would print, to get the Y to print out, I would say, hey, this variable here, I want the 4th letter because we go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's just something you have to memorize in Python. Super easy. Instead of counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you count 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the first thing is actually the 0th thing. So now you know how to count in Python. Let's keep it moving, because we got a lot to learn. Go ahead and smash that like button and tap the subscribe in case you can't watch this whole video or you just want to become an absolute master at this stuff. Because then you'll see all my videos, right? Now what we want to do is we want to do a little bit of math. Math in Python. But before that, I want to talk about importing stuff in Python. And this is one of my favorite things. Now, importing things is essentially this. Okay. Long story short, and this is why I love coding, is because the smartest people in the world, they've been doing this for 20, 30 years. I don't even know. Way longer than you or I, right? They're mathematicians. They know all this stuff that we don't really need to know anymore, because they just build it and then they allow us to import it. And importing means saying like, hey, for example, if I had this variable, but it was like 10,000 variables and all this crazy stuff, this whole machine, this piece of software, kind of like an app. Okay, that's a better analogy. You know, on your phone, you can download an app. Well, you can do the same thing with coding. You can be like, hey, I want to download your package. I want to import your module. That's how they say it. It's called a module, but in reality, it's just a pre-made app by another developer. And that module that you import is kind of like going to the App Store and saying, hey, download this app because I want to use it. So for example, I can say import math, and somebody built a whole library. Another weird word. A library is just like an app, right? It's just got all of these functions and variables that you can use. I can say import math. I hit play. Nothing's going to happen, but it did import math. So now I can do some math in Python. Now I'm going to show you pretty much basic math, but I wanted to talk about importing things just very briefly because you will import things, and it is weird terminology again. I'm going to put some of it here. Packages, import. It might be called import package. It might be called import modules. And this stuff, the reason I'm telling you all of these weird words and stuff is because when you Google things, you're going to get this weird terminology sometimes. And it's, to me, it was like, holy moly, I have no clue what you're saying. I wish I learned all these words when I got started, right? So when it gets intimidating like that, it's usually because of a lack of vocab. Not that you don't have a great vocab. I'm sure you have an amazing vocab. But like I said at the start, coders use really, really weird terminology that we just don't use in the English dictionary. And that's why we think coders are so smart, because they're using all these words that, you know, import modules. Or what are modules? I don't know. They're apps. They're like pre-made code by other developers that make our coding so much easier. So that's my little rant on importing. Could be called import package, import modules, and so on and so on. Let's talk about math. So math in Python is like math in the real world. Let's go ahead and start a variable, which is just a storage box, remember, and let's call this math box, and call it, let's type in 34.45. Okay, what is that? What type of number? Remember, the integers are the whole numbers. This is a float. So a float is a decimal point number. And then I could say plus 34. Now, if this is a float, because it's a decimal point number, this is an integer. Now, what if I wanted to print out math box now? Math box is going to do this equation. This is math equation. Like, you don't need to know super good math because it can just do it for you. I hit print, and it does that math equation for me. So that's how you add. This is how you minus. I hit play, and now it's 0.45, right? Because now it's 34.45 minus 34. By the way, if you ever have any questions, use me as a resource. Ask them below. I will make a follow-up video or multiple follow-up videos if I miss anything. I think I'm covering everything you need to know in Python. You know, as an algorithmic trader, I went through all of my notes, everything I learned over the last few years, put it all in this video. But if I miss anything, ask me in the question section below, in the comment section, and I will answer them or make a new video. But so you can see, that's how you add, that's how you subtract, this is how you multiply, this little asterisk. So math box now equals 34.45, and since it's a decimal, it's called a float, times 34, which is a whole number. So 34.45 times 34. I can't tell you that math, but look how quickly Python can. It's 1171.3. Now divide is like this. So take these notes. Do you know? It's plus, minus, multiply, divide, just like that. Now you can see 34.45 divided by 34 is 1.01. Now let's do let's do one more. And this would be, I don't use this much. Well, I sometimes use it, but when I was not coding, I wouldn't ever say, you know, this 34 to the power of 4. What is that? That's like 34 to the power of 4. So it's 34 times 34, 34 times 34 times 34. I think this is a little more advanced math, but this is just another equation you can do, and it's double asterisk. And you can see the power. 34 times 34, just like that. Now, let's see what else. Is there any other math I want to go over? And sorry, this was incorrect. Now it's correct. Well, actually, it was correct before. I've never put anything to the power of 34. Oh, I see what's going on here. It is correct, but you can see it's e plus 52. So this is like an exponent. You have to move the decimal over 52 times. So it's a humongous number. So when I put it to 3, it looks more correct. 34 to the power of 3 is 40,885. Now we're getting into advanced math. We don't really need to do that. These are the operators. But what you can do always is say, what are the math operators in Python? Just like that, Google. Remember, Google is your best friend. You can see plus, minus, asterisk, and there's more rows, so you can see examples there if you ever get stuck. Again, like, I want to make sure to teach you these fundamentals and show you how everything is actually on Google, but you just have to learn these fundamentals, some gibberish, these weird words, and all that, and then you can code anything because it's all on Google. So let's keep on moving. Let's jump into sentences. So now you know some math, which is awesome. And we've already gone over sentences a bit. So I will fly through this, but sentences equal strings. So whenever you want a sentence, if, hey, this is my sentence, you can't do it like this. You have to wrap it in parentheses, and they can be single or double. And here's a little trick for you. I highlighted this whole sentence. I hold down shift and I hit the parenthesis button, and it put parentheses on both sides. And I can say sentence equals that. Remember, sentences are simply just strings. So I can go ahead and say print sentence like that, and it will print my sentence. But what if I just wanted half the sentence? So let's do half equals sentence. And remember, I could say, okay, how many symbols are here? There's 0, because we start at 0. 0 is H. 1 is E. 2 is Y. 3 is this blank space. 4 is the T. And 5 is H. So what if I just wanted like half of it? So what is there? Probably 20 symbols here. I could say I want sentence 0, and then you use this colon here, 0 to 10. I just want half to be sentence 0 to 10, and I say print half. Now this is something very Googleable, but at the end of the day, I'm just saying, hey, take this sentence, which is this sentence, and I want position 0 all the way. I use this little colon here, all the way to 10, and then print half. Let's see what we get. This is I. So technically, this is position 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way to 10, and it cuts it off. Now if I said, hey, I want position 10 to, how about just the end? Well, I don't even need to put a number. I just put that colon there. You can see it starts at S and it gets this part of the sentence. So pretty cool things you can do. This is called slicing sentences. Slicing sentences. So remember, if you ever get stuck, you're a professional Googler now. So you just say how to slice sentences in Python, and you can go way, way deeper into this. Yes, I'm a real person. I'm actually just a regular old person. Taxis, these are so hard to do. And little known fact, we're actually training Google's AI every time we do that. If you want to learn how to code AI and things that do things for you and think for you, well, this is the first step. Watching this video, learn how to code. So let's see if there's anything else I want to go over in sentences. You already saw that we can set a variable to a sentence, and a sentence is simply just a string. It's just called that. And you can slice sentences. So this is actually called sentence slicing, like this. I'll delete it from here. And yeah, so here's a couple good tricks you can do with sentences. So let's keep it moving now that you know what sentences are, or really what strings are. Let me use the correct way. It's called a string. String is a sentence. Now, you remember the variables. Variables are little boxes, equal boxes to store stuff. But what if we want to store more things? There's more ways to store it. We can store it as a list. So list equals list of things to store. So a variable could be a number. So I could say num equals 56. And I could say print num, like this. And it will print 56, right? So that's a variable. What if I wanted a different variable? Well, variables can be anything. So it could be a sentence, which is a string. This is a string right here. So remember, sentence is string. But these are both variables, because anything that has a word here and then an equal sign after, that's a variable. It's just a storage box, remember? Now, if I print sentence, it prints out the sentence. Here's another cool thing you can do. You can say print sentence and num. This is a string, 56. So you can do cool things like that. You see, you can't just simply add them, because you can't add a string and a number. And this is another thing that's super intimidating, but this is what you're gonna have to work with. This is the actual error, but here you can see what the error is. Can only concatenate another weird word that's too big. I'm gonna make it smaller. Concatenate means you can't put together. Concatenate, put together. That's how I look at it, at least. Can only concatenate string, not integer. So you can't actually add a string to an integer. That's why I used the comma. But if I did want to add a string to an integer, I would have to just make this a string. This 56. Just like that. And you can see I use double quotes here instead of single quotes. It doesn't matter. But now you can see it adds it right here. This is a string because I said sentence. This is a string. And then plus the 56. It adds it literally though. You know, everything in coding is just so literal. So you have to tell it everything. There's no space in here. If I wanted a space, I'd have to go like this. Put a space there. This is a string. Okay, so now you know you can have numbers, you can have anything as a variable. But what's a list? A list is actually a set. It's a list of things to store. So let me call this my list equals, and I could do something like, you put the brackets like that, and then I could put the number in there, comma, and I could put the sentence. And let's have this number be actually a number, not a string. So you can see it equals 56. So I could have my list equals number and sentence. And what if I print my list now? Remember, it's not going to print this stuff just right away. Like if I don't have this print here, let me mark it out. Remember, hashtag marks it out. Let me hit play. Nothing happens because there's nothing being printed. But now if I print my list, and remember my list equals these two things, which number, and number is 56, and sentence equals this string, well, what do you think my list is going to print now? It prints the number because we asked it to. And then it prints the string because we asked it to right here. My list equals number and string. So you can have floats, you can have integers, you can have anything in lists. I could put another string here. Hey, hey. I could put a number here, a float. Hey, hey. And look, when I print it, it prints out all of it. And these are super helpful. You might be thinking, like, what am I going to need this for? I can just set a bunch of variables. You can, but look at this. What if I just wanted the third thing out of this list? Well, what would I do? How would I get this? Think about it for a second. Remember, we started at 0. I would just say, hey, I want the second thing out of the list because we started at 0. 0, 1, 2. And by the way, if you hover over things, it shows you the type, which is an integer. You can see the sentence, shows you the type, which is a string. But if I want the second thing or the third thing out of this list, I would have to count 0, 1, 2, and be hey, hey, print. Now if I print it, it's just going to say hey, hey. But what if I want the last thing out of the list? I could say number 3, because remember, 0, 1, 2, 3. Just like that. So that's why lists are super important, and I highly recommend diving deeper into lists. You know, watch some more YouTube videos, ask some more questions, Google it, how to use lists. I'm going to use it throughout this training and I'll fly through it, but this is just one of the fundamentals that you got to know. You got to know how to work with lists, and they're just storage boxes that you can store more stuff in. You know, if a variable is a storage box, a list is a list of storage things. Like you got the whole warehouse you can put in there. Now, the next thing is a dictionary. Dictionary like this, and it has a key and a value. So if I made a dictionary, let's call this my dictionary equals, they're in this weird format here, and you'll just have to kind of memorize this. I could say name, and then you put this colon equals moon, and then I put a comma, and I could say age equals 30. Now, the reason you have to learn how to use dictionaries is simply because everybody uses them, and a lot of data is stored here. If I want the name, I would just simply say print my dictionary at the name position. Let's see how that works. It prints out moon. So essentially there's a key, and I know this is very hard to read, like I get it, and it just takes some time to look at. That's why I just recommend just typing this down and just typing it again, changing the name, changing the age. But essentially a dictionary is just a different way to store stuff. A list is one way to store things. A dictionary is another way to store things. In my opinion, or the way I usually, when I'm writing code, I'm using lists. And when I'm like getting code from an exchange or something, this is a dictionary. Look at my bottom right real quickly. This is just like all this ugly stuff here, super intimidating. It's actually a dictionary. You can see here, if I were to be like, hey, I want the price, it would give me this 2250. So in our case, hey, my dictionary, I want the name, it printed out moon. And why did it print out this number up here? Because I asked it to up here in this print my list. So I'll mark it out for now. By the way, I really appreciated the person who taught me this. If I select this whole thing here, I just select it with my keyboard, and then I'm on a Mac. If I hit Command \, it marks it out. So that is Command plus \. These little keyboard shortcuts, I do them without thinking now, but if I ever don't tell you one of them, please let me know in the comment section, because these keyboard shortcuts are going to save you hours of time, and it just really, really helps. And I wish I would have learned all the keyboard shortcuts at the start. But if you select something, then hit Command plus \, that will fully mark it out. So for example, if I select all this and I hit Command \, it marks it out. Now here, let's do another couple more things that I can teach you with the keyboard shortcuts before we jump back into dictionaries. If I'm at the back of this line, I'm here, you can see my cursor. If I hit Command Shift and then the arrow backwards, I can select the whole thing. So I'll write that down. It's Command plus Shift plus the back arrow, or like your keyboard. So it's like you know, if you're playing a game, up, down, right, it's left. So Command Shift left. Command Shift, and this is on Mac, so it might be different on PC, but I'm sure you can figure it out. Whatever command is on PC. So those are two little tricks I wanted to show you. Command plus Shift backwards. This will select everything, and then after I select it, I can hit Command backslash, or is that a forward slash? Whatever this is. I think this is actually a forward slash. That marks it out. So now you know those two things. So let's go ahead and jump back into dictionaries. I'll try to explain this more. Dictionaries are just a key and a value. And it's a way to store data. You saw here in the bottom right of my screen this big old dictionary. It's the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life. It is so intimidating to look at, and it's the reason I didn't learn how to code for so many years, but I wish I did, because in reality it's not hard. Now, if I say, hey, I want my dictionary, without putting in the key, what do you think is going to print? It prints out the whole dictionary. But now, what if I go ahead and I make this dictionary bigger? Let's go ahead and say fave food, and let's say pizza, and let's say location, and let's say earth, like that. Now if I print out the dictionary, what do you think is going to happen? It prints out all that information. But a dictionary, and again, this is just something you'll have to remember, a dictionary is just storing data. So if I want that data, well, I want the favorite food, so I just copy that, and you want the quotes as well, or you could just type it, and I want to say my dictionary, I just want the favorite food. You put the brackets, and then you paste that in there. So now I just want to print my dictionary, I want the favorite food. And it shows me pizza. But if I want the location, I can just double click that and paste it in. And I say, hey, location. I want the location, and it's Earth. Or if I want the age, I just do that. So try this with your own values. You know, put in your own little story in here, make your own dictionary, and then let's just keep it moving. Dictionaries for me were really hard to understand at the start. I don't know if you've grasped this already. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comment section. I'm here to help. You know my mission. I'm here to help. I want to teach as many people in the world how to code, because it's the great equalizer, and it doesn't matter where you live, who you are, what color your skin is, how much money you have. As long as you have a computer and an internet connection, you can code. And I hope someday I can teach so many people how to code that I can start giving computers out to those that don't have computers, because that would just be amazing, you know? Yeah, it's just like, I've thought a lot about this, how to make this game of life fair to everybody, and this is the best way I can help. So that's why I'm doing this. If you're enjoying this thus far, you know, I appreciate you. Tap that like, and let's just keep on moving. So now you know how to store data in dictionaries and lists. What else can you do? Well, sometimes you want to do this, and sometimes you want to do that, right? Sometimes I want to say, hey, what's your name? Sometimes I want to say, what's up? So let's say that. Let's say sentence 1. And by the way, I didn't teach you this yet, but in Python, we use underscores instead of spaces. And I can say, hey, what's up? Did you catch that, by the way? In Python, instead of using spaces, you can't use spaces. They have to be connected. So if I want sentence 1, I have to put an underscore there. It doesn't have to be underscore. You could do it a different way, but this is how you do it to be a good coder, underscores. It's called snake casing, I believe. No, it's not snake casing. Snake casing is like this. Snake casing. This is called Pythonic. I don't know what it's called, but underscores, use underscores to separate words. Sentence 2, and I'll just say sent 2 equals yo. Okay, and then I could say number 1 equals 45, and number 2 equals 56. And what I'm teaching here is if, elif, and else. Okay, so let me explain this first. An if statement is do something, if true. So if something is true, do that with the if statement, or else, which is elif, do something else. I know this probably doesn't make sense yet, don't worry. And then, so I'll say or else if, which is elif, or else, this is your final statement. So how do I explain this? So there's if, elif, and else. It's kind of like this. Okay, you got to do your chores today in your house, right? What do you have to do to clean your house? Well, you probably have to clean the bathrooms. You have to clean the kitchen. And you have to clean the living room. No, you have to clean your bedroom. You have to clean your bedroom. You got to clean the bathroom. And you got to clean the kitchen. Well, if it's chore day, like for example, if you do your chores on Saturday, well, the first thing you would do, you say, oh, it's chore day. Okay. Well, the first thing you would say is, well, if it's Saturday, then we do chores, right? So I could, in Python, I would say if day equals Saturday, then do chores, right? And don't worry about this code for now. It's not going to work. I just want to explain this. So if the day is Saturday, then you do your chores. Else, if it's not Saturday, just chill, right? If you do your chores on Saturday, well, if the day equals Saturday, you do your chores. Else, you just chill. You know, do your regular day. I'm just going to say regular day. Does that make sense? Like if you do your chores on Saturday, every Saturday, in your mind, you ask yourself, well, is it Saturday? If the day equals Saturday, we're going to do our chores. Or else, we're just going to do our regular day. Super simple, right? Well, let's give another example. Right? Your chores consist of clean bathroom, kitchen, bedroom. Right? So if it's Saturday, you do your chores. Now let's assume it's Saturday. Well, if bathroom is dirty, clean bathroom. So you understand how you use if statements in your day-to-day life, right? If bathroom is dirty, clean bathroom. Pretty simple. But what if I say, if kitchen is dirty, then you clean the kitchen. Now, here's how the elif comes into play. This is pretty much saying, well, we're reading this, right? And I know this is intimidating. Don't worry. We're going to get through this. Just type everything I type. If kitchen dirty, well, this is a true or false. And what's a true or false? What's the weird name for it? It's called a Boolean. But what if you walk out in the kitchen, it's chore day, you're doing chores today, and if kitchen is dirty, then you clean the kitchen, but the kitchen is clean. So the kitchen is clean, I don't need to do that. So what happens here in code is you just move on to the else if. So that's pretty much saying, well, if this is not true, so is kitchen dirty? No, it's clean. It's already clean. So we'll jump on to the else if. And that's if, else if, what do you do when the kitchen is clean? Well, you do the else if. You just fall into here and you do the next thing. What's the next thing? Well, you would just say else if is the bedroom dirty? And yes, the bedroom's dirty. So we say clean bedroom. And I'm just doing this to illustrate how this works in your day-to-day life. If the kitchen is dirty, clean the kitchen. But if the kitchen is clean, just move on to the next thing. So else if the bedroom's dirty, we'll clean the bedroom. But what if the bedroom's clean? Well, else, let's say, pretty much if both of these, like if the bedroom is clean or the kitchen is clean, well, this is false then, because kitchen dirty? No, it's not, it's clean. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to this part of the code. Well, else if, is the bedroom dirty? No, the bedroom's not dirty either. So I wanna just move on and do this instead. I can have another elif. Elif is the bathroom dirty? If the answer is yes, then clean the bathroom. So I just want to do this to illustrate like how if statements work in your real life, because if you understand how they work in your real life, then code, like I said, it's just like, it's not that hard. It's just a few things you got to learn, and it will just take time. And if this is a lot for you now, don't worry. Just type everything I type, go through the video again, and you will eventually learn all this. You see that you can, the careers for coding are just so much better. So I want to explain this, how it would work in your brain, and then we can show you the actual code. So here, is the kitchen dirty? No, it's clean. So I'm just going to move on to here. Is the bedroom dirty? No, it's clean. So I'm going to move on to here. Elif again. So you can have multiple elifs. Is the bathroom dirty? Yes, it's dirty. So I need to clean the bathroom. But what if the bathroom was clean? You could have a fail-safe here, which is else. This is pretty much saying, hey, if all this is false, do this. Well, else, play games. Play video games. Because all of this, I said, hey, is the kitchen dirty? Nope, it's clean. So I'm going to move on here. I'm going to say, hey, is the bedroom dirty? Nope, it's clean. So I'm going to move here. Is the bathroom dirty? Nope, it's clean. So I'm just going to move here, and no matter what, since I put else, that's the difference between else. Else is like the fail-safe. Else is like what to do if all the other things are false. So in this case, all of these are false because your house is spectacular right now, super clean. Well, then you just go play video games because else. So if is the first condition, and if you clean the kitchen, you would just jump down here and new code. So now you kind of know how to do this by in your brain, right? How you use it at home. I want to show you how to do this with some examples above. So let's go ahead and go right here, and you can see here this got imported. I don't know why. Delete it. You can see sentence 1 equals hey, what's up? Sentence 2 says yo yo yo, and number 1 equals 45. And number 2 equals 56.56. Now, what's the difference between these two numbers besides the value? Well, number 1 is an integer, right? Because it's a whole number, equals whole number. And number 2 has a decimal place, so what is it? Gives you a second to float. So you just got to remember those, so I'll just keep using them. But let's use this if statement. Let's say if number 1 is bigger than number 2. No, let's say if number 1 is smaller than number 2. Let's print sentence 1. And what do you think is going to happen here? If number 1 is smaller than number 2, we're going to print sentence 1. So think about it for a second, and then let's print it, or let's play. It says, hey, what's up? It says, because number 1, you can see is 45, and number 2 is 56.56, and so that's true. This is true. Number 1 is smaller than number 2. So we're going to print sentence 1, and sentence 1 is a string. Remember, string is just a sentence, and it says, hey, what's up? But what if we say, if number 1 is bigger? So number 1 is 45. Number 2 is 56.56. If number 1 is bigger than number 2, print sentence 1. What do you think is going to happen now? It does nothing. Does that make sense? Because number 1 is 45. Sorry, I'm a little dyslexic. And number 2 is 56.56. So number one, in fact, is not true now, it's false. So let's go back to our statement here, and let's say elif number one is smaller than number two, then we want to print sentence two. So this is saying, hey, if number one is bigger than number two, and we know that's false because 45 is not bigger than 56, then it would print that. But since that's false, it would go on to the second, the else if, and it would check the condition again. Is number one smaller than number two? If number one is smaller than number two, print sentence two, which is yo, yo, yo. So what do you think is going to happen here? Give you a second, and let's print it out. It says yo, yo, yo. That makes sense, right? Now I want to bring in a new operator here, and this is equals. So equals is like this usually when we're saying variables. You can see variable number 2 equals 56.6. But when you're checking something, you use double equals. Why? I don't know. It's just one of those things to memorize. So when checking true or false, use double equals. Now you could also say, is it not equal to? Is exclamation equals? Is it greater than or equal to? Or is it less than and equal to? So write those operators down. These are called operators, and we'll go ahead and use some of them. So I'll say, okay, number one, is that bigger than number two? 45, is it bigger than 56? No. Okay, is number one equal to number two? Also no. So what's going to happen here when I print it? Nothing, because both of these are false. But remember, we could put another elif here. Let's say number one, let's say, is number one greater than or equal to number two? So we can say print sentence 3, which we don't have. So we need to make a sentence 3. And you can put these sentences anywhere, just above. It has to be above. So, hello, Moto. And we'll say, okay, if this is false, go to this. Let's see what happens. Nothing happens because number one is not bigger or equal to number two. But what if I said smaller or equal to? What do you think is going to happen? Hello, Moto! Because number one is 45 and number two is 56. So number one is smaller or equal to number two. It's in fact smaller. But what if I said, is number one not equal to number two? Hello, Moto. It does this action here because number one, in fact, is not equal to number two. So you saw the operators here. I won't go over all of them in this example, but let's go ahead and go back to this one where it prints out nothing because number one is not bigger or equal to. And I know this is getting ugly, right? But you're doing this. It's weird to look at, but you're writing this out and you're coding right now. So give yourself a big old pat on the back because you are so much further than 99.9% of the population already. And I want to show you the last thing here, which is else, or in this section at least. So nothing printed out because number one is not bigger or equal to. So this is like our fail-safe. Do this if all else false. So do this action if everything else is false. So I would say print, and by the way, I don't know if you've noticed this. I know I kind of blew past it. They have to have a tab in here or 4 spaces. I just use tabs. Some coders like to say, hey, I only use spaces. Whatever. I don't care about that stuff. I think that a lot of coders are very, I don't want to what I'm trying to say is people get stuck in their ways, and coding is no different. People get stuck in their ways and they say, hey, use 4 spaces here or a tab. Either way, it has to be in here, and a tab equals 4 spaces. So I just use tab. Whenever you're doing an if statement, after this colon here, this colon is a mandatory, and then you hit a tab, and you push it over. Now I want to show you here, what if I just did this? Or if I forgot this, I say else print this is the failsafe. I'm making this too easy for you guys. I'm not showing any errors. So what I want to do here is I want to show an error. Let's hit play. You can see it underlines this because it says invalid syntax. And what's going on here? Well, it's because I forgot this right here. I forgot this colon. There has to be a colon after each of these. Let's try play again. And you can see this is the failsafe. So else pretty much does, it's your failsafe. If everything else is false, you then can just have an else statement and it does that. And I use these, you know, right now you might be thinking like, why do you need all this information? Why would you want to print out sentences? And like, what am I going to do with this? Like I said, I'm an algo trader. I go ahead and put my strategies into automated trading strategies and algorithms to trade for me. So I'm showing you the basics here, like with printing sentences and whatnot, but these fundamentals will allow you to do anything, including what I do. If you're interested in finance and all that good stuff, you can do this as well. You can do algo trading. You see my algo going the whole time during this video down here. So like, that's awesome, but it all comes down to knowing these fundamentals. So even if you're having a hard time right now thinking of like, hey, what am I going to use this information for? Like, what am I going to use sentences and strings for? What type of program am I going to make? Yada, yada. Don't worry about it. I'm teaching the fundamentals so then you can build anything you want to build. And the fundamentals are so, so important. But now you know how to use if, elif, and else statements, which is probably one of the biggest things inside of coding. So now that we know that, you also learned the operators. You learned exactly how to use the correct operators. These are all the operators here. So let me just go ahead and write this down here. Operators. I can barely even spell. So if you're worried that you have to be super smart to do this, don't. Operators are these, and remember, you use the double quotes or the double question, double equal sign if you want to check if it's true. Exclamation mark equal sign if it's not equal to, and you can see I used the equal sign here, and so on and so on. You've learned a lot so far, so I'm really, really proud of you. There's just a few more things I want to go over, and that's it. Like, it's not that hard, as you can see. So what I'm going to do here is we're going to jump into this next box here, and we're just going to keep on moving. Just keep going, and hey, if you're running out of time, hit the like button, subscribe, and come to this video later. But I promise you, you are so close to knowing everything you need to know in Python. And then after that, all you do is you just Google it. How to code in Python, how to do this in Python, how to use operators in Python, how to, for example, how to use if statements in Python. There's literally nothing that's not on the internet. You can see Python conditions. What I like to do sometimes is just open like 3 or 4 of these up. And just like, if you have a topic you don't know, just read these blogs. They're all there. Like, look at all of this stuff. It's all there. elif, it shows you exactly how to use else and if statements. If B is bigger than A, and A is 200, B is 33, if B is bigger than A, print this. If A equals B, print that. So it's all here. It's all on the internet, and it's really on you. Like, how much do you want to learn? How good do you want to be at this? I'm showing you all of the things you need to know, and if you can memorize everything in this video, or at least understand everything in this video, you're going to be good to go, because then you got your trusty friend Google to help you out. And please use me as well. I'm here to help you. So let's go ahead and show you the next step of this. What I want to do here is go ahead and talk about indexing. Now, you already saw here, I'll grab this example again, just so we can hammer this in. My list, remember, a list is just a list of variables or anything. You can say my list equals number, sentence, hey. Now, I already have all that. If I hit play, nothing's going to happen. But if I hit print my list, it shows me the whole list. Now indexing is pretty much counting. I've already taught you this, but essentially the first position is 0. So 0, 1, 2, 3. And you might be asking yourself, how does number work? Well, we saved it up here. Since we saved it already as num, I don't even know where it is. We've done so much. Num's right up here. So that's the cool thing about coding. You just have to save it one time. And once it's there, and you put it in your list. But indexing is just getting things out of your list or out of your sentence. You saw earlier, I got like the first letter, right? I can just say, hey, I want my list at position 1. So at position 1, I'm going to get sentence. And what is sentence? I don't even remember anymore. This is a string. But at position 2, remember, we count 0, 1, 2. What would it get? It would print, hey, hey. So indexing is quite simple. And if you want the last thing out of a list, I wanted to show you this for sure. You can just say -1. So you can count backwards as well. So -1 would be 63 or 67.34. -2, what do you think that would be? Well, since we're counting backwards, 1, 2. And it's weird because counting forwards, you start with 0, but counting backwards, you start with -1. So that's just a weird thing. -2 is hey, hey. What is -3? Well, let's count from the backwards, regular way. 1, 2, 3. So I'll write that down. Going forward, counting is 0, 1, 2, etc. And going backwards, counting is -1, -2, -3, and so on and so on. So definitely write that down. That's how you kind of like grab things out of a list. And the next thing I want to talk about is loops. So let's go ahead and say loops here. And there's 2 types of loops. And we'll get to that in just a second. So essentially there's while loops and there's for loops. Now, another thing you're just going to have to memorize, the 2 types of loops, right? Not too hard. Essentially, for loops, let's start with while loops. While loops they loop through something. Like, for example, let's think of this for a second. Let's think of a good analogy here. While loops do something until you tell it to stop. So, like, for example, if you were going to play a video game and you're going to play it until you're out of time. Let's say you have 2 hours. 2 hours to play video games. Well, you're actually in a while loop. You're in a while loop. You're in a while loop of playing video games until that 2 hours expires. So while 2 hours, let's say while hours under 2 play games. Makes sense, right? So while hours are under 2, like you have 2 hours to play video games, while the hours are under 2, you play. So let's go ahead and say hours equal 2. And let's say play video games. Let's just say print play video games. Now this will actually crash my computer because hours equals 2, right? So 2. And hours, is it under 2? No, it equals 2. So let's say while hours equal under 2.1, how about? So if hours equals 2, well, this will run forever, right? Because hours is equal to 2. So it's always under 2.1. So this will actually crash my computer because it'll just run forever. And you can see it says play video games, play video games, play video games, play video games. I have to manually stop it because it's just always going to go. And you can see I can barely get back up to where I was because 2 hours, hours equals 2, remember it's a variable, is always going to be less than 2.1. And you can see it kind of crashed my computer. So, since it's just running through this code one time and printing play video games, and you can see it prints it, but then it loops, and that's why it's called loops. It loops again and does it again, and it prints it again, and then it loops and does it again. And since hours is always going to be under 2.1, well, it's going to keep looping forever because that's always going to be true. So this is how you do a while loop. While loop, it starts with the word while. So while this is true, or if I could say while hours equals 2.1, play video games. What do you think is going to happen there? Nothing, because hours equals 2, and 2 is never equal to 2.1. So let's go ahead and go back to that while hours is under 2.1. But now let's reset, and this is a new thing you're learning here, is you could say hours equals plus, actually it might be plus equals, say hours, and then we'll take hours plus 0.01. So essentially we're saying while hours is under 2.1, and remember hours is 2, so while 2 is under 2.1, play video games. But then we're going and saying, hey, we're going to add and then reassign, another weird word, reassign the hours to equal hours plus 0.01. Now this is kind of advanced, so I'm going to mark it out for now and ignore it. But I could say this because I want you to understand that I can say hours now equals 3. So whenever you make a variable, if you write the variable again here and say it's 3, well, the code is going to remember it as 3. And then if I wrote it again and I said it equals 56, well, the code's going to remember it 56. So the way coding works is it reads straight down. So it reads this, it says hours equals 2. Then it's like, okay, well, never mind, hours equals 3. And then it forgets about that. It's like, oh, actually, hours equals 56. So in this case, what do you think is going to happen here? While hours, which equals 2, is under 2.1, print video games. But then I say hours equals 3. So now, next time it goes around, remember it loops. That's why it's called a loop. While we set hours again to 3, so it says while hours, and hours now equals 3 is under 2.1. What do you think is going to happen in this? Let's print it. So it just prints it once, right? Because we say while hours is under 2.1 and hours equals 2, then it prints play video games. But then after that, we say hours equals 3. So it loops back and it says hours is under 2.1. No, that's false. So let's go to a more advanced example here. I could say hours, you know how you can reassign them. That's like saying, hey, hours equals 2, now hours equals hours plus 0.01. And just to make it a little clearer, you can always put brackets in here. I don't know if you remember back in, or parentheses, back in math, you could put stuff in here. So now hours equals hours plus 0.01. Hours equals, sorry, that plus shouldn't be there. So hours equals hours plus 0.01. So it loops through hours equals 2, and then it equals hours plus 0.01. So it's 2.01. So that's why it prints like 10 or 11 times, because it's 2.01 plus 2.02 plus 2.03 all the way up until hours is bigger than 2.1 and it stops. Now I can show you another example. If I made this like 0.5, hours plus 0.5, what do you think is going to happen here? Well, it only prints once because it goes hours equals 2, and 2 is under 2.1, so print video games. But now hours equals hours plus 0.5, so it equals 2.5. So it loops through again and says hours is 2.5 now. Hold on. 2.5 is bigger than 2.1. So I'm done. I'm done with this while loop. So while loops loop until false. So that's a while loop. Now, if that doesn't make any sense to you, don't worry. We have trusted Google here, and half of the reason I'm teaching you this way and I'm teaching super fast is because I want this. I want to teach you everything you need to know, but I also want to teach you the most important part, which is, yes, you learn all of these weird words and Booleans and all this stuff, but the most important part is you learn that and then you learn how to Google it. Because anytime you have a question, somebody has asked it before. How to use while loops in Python. And this is a great way to learn code in general, because everybody gets stuck on different things. Like while loops were really hard for me, and all I did is I said how to use while loops in Python. I open up like 3 of these pages here and just read all of this, because it will show you exactly how this person teaches it. You saw how I taught it, but maybe this person teaches it better for you. Maybe you read better, right? Better than you watch videos. I'm a video guy, but hey, everybody learns differently, and there's just so many resources online. So that's how while loops work. And for loops will just do a condition until you tell it to stop. So this is a little confusing, to be honest. So I'm going to try to explain it as good as possible. Let's say X equals a list of 23, 45, and hey there. So this list consists, let's make this a float. This list consists of a float, if I can type, a float, an integer, and a string. Let's go ahead and let's get rid of this just so we don't need to look at it. But for loops, loop until a condition is fulfilled. So I could say, and this is tricky to comprehend in your mind. So you just have to do it a bunch. And I recommend watching this part over again and putting in your own information so you can see how it works. I can put for y in x, and remember x is this, print y. Now this took me so long to figure out or to understand. For y and x, print x. Now let's make this a little easier. Let's call this listy. So for y in listy, print y. So this y can be anything. Now that's super weird because coding is super specific thus far, and you see it. You see, like, when we do something wrong, there's an error. But this, when you're using for loops, the first word can be anything. The first word after for can be anything. So you can see I put for here, and then this can be a random thing. That's why I just put y. I could put like zzz. I can say for zzz in listy, print zzz, or just one time. And then it will print all of this, because it's essentially taking whatever you put here and it's saying, hey, the first time through this loop, remember we're just looping through, the first time we're going to make zzz equal that. The second time we do it, we make zzz equal that. And then the third time we make it equal that. And you can see it prints it out like that. 23 the first time, and then it's 45, and then it's hey there. So this is confusing. It's hard to comprehend, but you have to play with it yourself for a while. And don't worry, I'll dive into this deeper. But this, after the for, can be set to anything, and then it can loop through lists or dictionaries and so on. But you just have to know overall that this could be hey, for hey, print hey. And then if I print it, these things don't matter. The only thing that matters is what list are you looping through. And the list is this, or it could be a dictionary or whatever. And I believe you can also do like for x in range of 10, print x, see what happens there. You can see, you can use this little function here saying for x, so these are important, the for and the in. It's saying, hey, do a for loop for whatever this can be anything, in this list, in this case, for this one, and it prints out these three things. But in this case, we're calling something extra. Like, hey, if I want, instead of having to print out 1, 2, 3, 4 all the way to 9, let me say for range in 10. Now, if you want to 10, you have to go to 11. Another weird coding thing. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now, to make it a little more clear, I'll mark this one out. You can see for x, or I could say for whatever. It could be anything. That could be anything. Hard to understand, but it's just is what it is. For in range of 100 and, like, what if you wanted all these numbers? Like, that's a lot of numbers. Well, you use a for loop. Print it out, and you can see it prints out all those numbers. Pretty cool, right? So that's how you use while loops and for loops. Brief overview, but remember how to use for loops. And there's so many different opinions on how to use them and videos, and it's just all here. What I'm trying to do is give you the skeleton and show you exactly how to use them. And then if you want to learn more, you can do that by using Google. The #1 key in coding is to be a good Googler. That's why I keep showing Google. I keep telling you that joke that you're becoming a professional Googler, but I already know you're a professional Googler. You're here on YouTube, and YouTube is pretty much the new Google. So there's so much stuff on Google, and you will absolutely crush it as long as you're persistent. So now you know while loops go forever until something's false, and for loops just go through a range or until you say stop. So let's jump on down here, past all of this stuff, and let's hit another block. And in this block, we're going to go over functions. Now, what are functions? Functions are essentially, how do I want to explain this? You know how variables are like a shoebox? You can store anything. You know, you have lists, you have variables, you have lists, you have dictionaries. These are all different ways of storing things. But what if you wanted to store, like, for example, you have a storage unit, right? And in that storage unit, you have like 20 boxes. You have like 20 variables, which are just boxes of data. You have like 6 lists. You've got like 10 dictionaries. Well, you can store them all in a function. And to create a function, you just say storage unit. Let's call it, this is what we're calling it. And then you do that. So that's the syntax to doing that. You put def equals function, use def for a function, then the name of func with that. Use these double parentheses and this colon. And you say def, and then I could say, hey, let's do shoes equal a string. I'm gonna call them Jordans. Game equals Zelda. Age equals 27. What else do we want to put in here? We've got a float. Let's move a float. GPA equals 2.780, and so on and so on. And now you have a storage unit for all of your different things, all your different variables. What if I wanted a list? Let's say my list equals shoes, game. Oh, sorry. You got to put this thing. Shoes, game, age, and I want a different sentence. Let's say, hey there. And you can see it underlines, so when you get an error, it underlines it. And do you see why it's an error? It's because I don't have a variable named games. I have a variable named game. So I need to change that. And then look at this. What's going to happen if I print this out or if I hit play? Absolutely nothing. In the background, you did say, hey, computer, this is my storage unit. But if you want to run this storage unit, you actually have to go like this. So like that. So let me hit that now, and it's going to run storage unit. But guess what? It still doesn't do anything because we're not telling it to do anything. So look at this. Now if I go, what if inside of my storage unit, I can say print my list. Let's print my list. And this should print all this stuff, right? So if I hit play, what happens? Nothing. Nothing happens because I didn't call the storage unit. So I have to take this storage unit and paste it right there. And now it should print out my list because inside of my storage unit, I have all these variables, this string, age, which is a integer, and GPA, which is a float. I have all that, and then I put it into a list, and then I ask it to print my list. But I just said now actually run the storage unit. Before it was like, hey computer, remember everything in my storage unit. I run it, it shows nothing because I'm just saying remember it. But here I'm saying actually run it. Don't just remember it, run it. And now it prints out my list because I told it to print out my list. Pretty simple. I mean, if you have any questions, please do let me know. Now, one more thing you want to know about functions here. Actually, a couple things. Let's go ahead and say return. And let's say shoes. Let's just say shoes and then my list. So essentially what this is doing, and just write it down if it doesn't make sense. You practice makes perfect with this type of stuff. So I'm going to delete print my list and let's run it again. And you can see storage unit, it works here because we're using this IDE is what they call it. We're using Google Colab, but it won't work in the future. Long story short, we're printing this. We're not printing anything. So this is almost kind of fake that it's printing this. But if I wanted to get only the shoes, I returned the shoes and I returned my list. So if I wanted the shoes, I could say shoes equals storage unit and then at this position, 0. And then I could say print shoes. And it shows me Jordans. But if I want to say, hey, I want the list, my list here, you return it and it's at the position 1, because remember we go 0, 1, and then I could say print my list like this, and it will print my whole list. But remember, you can do like, hey, I only want my list at the last position, so -1. So I would just get hey there. Or if I want the position -2, you could just say, hey, -2. And now I know we're getting super advanced, so don't worry about it. If this doesn't make sense, just do it again. Go ahead and read more about functions. But this is the kind of overview of how to use functions. You now know how to return information out of functions, and returning allows you to use it. So it allows use in other parts of the code. So you just saw, I said, hey, my list is the first item, 0, 1, in this function. So I can set my list to this function at place 1. And then since my list is this, I could also say, hey, I only want the age out of that. Now just play around with it. Try to plug in your own words and variables, and that will really help you understand this better. Now I'm going to show you something that comes with functions, or is part of functions. A very, very big part of functions that took me a very long time to really understand. So don't worry if you don't understand this part right away. Hey, you might be able to pick it up quickly. It doesn't matter, just watch, learn, and watch again and play with your own variables and all that good stuff, and it will really start to come to you over time. So what I want to do is I want to pass in information into a function. I highly recommend studying this part on Google, how to pass in information. Pass in information into a function. I would Google that and I would read 3 or 4 blogs about it. This was very hard for me to understand, but it's so important. I don't want to intimidate you here either. It's really not that hard, but let's say we have a function and we say def, because in order to make a function just like this, we say def and then we put the function. Let's call this passing, and then let's make a variable called car equals Toyota. Sorry, again, I'm a little dyslexic. And let's say number equals 67. Okay, so I can print car, and what's going to happen here? Look at the function and what I told you before. Let's print car. Nothing's going to happen because I didn't call it. So I have to go ahead and call it like this, and then it will work. So what I want to show you now is what you're going to see a lot. It could say car like this. You pass in car like that. And now when I call the function, watch what happens. I'm actually going to delete this because we don't want the car. We'll pass in the car. And watch this. Passing, I try to run the function now. Well, I'll keep the car for now just to keep it simple. I try to run it and it should print out Toyota, right? But look, it underlines my thing. And it says missing one required positional argument. So one required positional argument. What the heck does that mean? To me, that still doesn't make sense. Like argument. Why do we have to use argument for that? I don't know. But that's what they use. That's what we use as coders. So as you can see, it says this function is called passing, and it says car right here. So essentially, I need to pass in, and how do I pass in something? I pass it in by putting it in here. So I could say like BMW. And I'm just for example, I'm going to remove this, but now it says run the passing function and have this be the car. So now it should print out the car, BMW, because I'm running this function. It's asking here for a car type, and we're passing it in the car type. Now, a good way to show this example is I'll remove car from here, and remember, when coding, it reads top down. So it reads in car equals Toyota. Okay? So def passing car means we're saying a function called passing, and it passes in the car, and then the number 67. Now, if I say car, if I put here like this, essentially what it's going to do is if you don't pass in this BMW here like this, it's going to set car to car, and car is set up here. So it should print Toyota. I trust me, you got to play with this yourself and put in your own stuff, because to me this was super hard to understand. But once you understand this, you really understand coding. So for example, this says this is a function, right? And we know it's a function because it says def, and then this is the name of the function. And then if you ever see this, this means, hey, I need to pass something in. What the heck is passing in? Well, down here, you can see I run the function and I don't pass anything in. Since I don't, it goes to the default. Like it's going to use the default default argument, technically is what it's called. Car equals car. So it's going to be like, hey, okay, they didn't pass anything in when they called this function, so we're just going to have it be car. So I print it out here, and it prints out Toyota. But now in the case that I do pass something in, let's say Lambo, if I pass in the Lambo, now it's going to be like, oh, great, we don't have to use the default, which is car. We get to use whatever they passed in. So now car equals whatever they passed in. So guess what's going to happen here? This is going to print out Lambo. See? See the difference there? And then since it's already set to equals, car equals car, that means there's a default value. So if argument, I'm going to use the word, but I don't like it, has an equals, then there's a default. So write that down real quick. Car equals car. If the argument has an equals, then there is a default, and it's not needed to pass something in. You should, I think you should pass something in, absolutely, but it's not required. And let me illustrate this. If there isn't an equals, look at this. Def car, it's saying, hey, pretty much you have to pass something in or else this function is not going to work. So right now I'm passing something in, so it should work. It should be Lambo, right? But now it's going to yell at me if I don't pass something in. So passing, since the car does not equal something, that means there's no default value, shows an error. And what's that error? Passing, missing one required positional argument. Now what I like to do when I can't figure something out, I just copy this whole thing right here, and guess where I go? Because I'm a professional Googler, and I'll just type in Python with it, and it will show me exactly the answer. You can also type in Stack Overflow, but again, like this shows you the answer on Stack Overflow. I can't get past this error, yada yada, and it will tell you, it will just tell you the answer. So it's like, okay, if coding is a big old test, guess what? All of the answers are on the internet. So if it shows car with no equal sign, you absolutely have to do it. So I'm gonna put like, what kind of car can we think of here? Let's do a Honda. And now it will work because I'm passing it in. So play with this, use your own, create some of your own functions, create some of your own passing in of things. This was hard for me to do, but now you know how to return inside of functions so you can use them later. And if you're confused on any of this, there's so much on Google to keep learning. You know how to pass in things into a function, and you know how to create functions now. So you can create as many functions as you want, and they're just super simple to make. This is a func. And you just have to use the double parentheses with that little guy, and then you can put anything in here. Hey equals hi, or whatever, and they're saved forever. So functions are one of the bigger parts of coding. I would say functions, if statements that you already learned about. So you're absolutely crushing it, and I am so proud of you, because most people just give up because it's a little hard. It is hard, but it's not impossible as long as you're persistent. And now you really know how to code. And I want to show you one last section, and this is advanced. Like, this is going to, like, if you're here and you've gotten to this point, you know everything you need to know in order to code. Now, I'm an algo trader, so I had to learn some other things. Now, like Google Sheets and what is the other one? Excel. Google Sheets and Excel. Like, that would be super nice to be able to use them in Python. So there's this package, and if you remember, a package or a module, I tried to explain this earlier, but essentially these are just like little apps that other developers make, and then we can use them. which is so amazing because like all the really hard stuff in coding is already done, and we just go ahead and say import pandas, just like that. Now I can say import pandas as PD, so I don't have to type out pandas every time. And this is pretty much saying, hey, get that app that's called pandas and let me use it by typing PD. So get app called pandas and let me use it by typing PD. If I run this, that's all. It imported it. Now we can use pandas. Pandas is essentially, pandas equals a Google Sheet or Excel. And did you catch what I did here with this equal sign? Since this is not, I'm not saying a variable, this is not actually code, but even now when I think, I use double quotes when I'm saying something's true or false. Like, I'm just checking. I'm not setting a variable. When you set a variable, you use single equals. When you're checking if something's true or false, you use double equals. So I just thought I would use that there just to show you that like this is gonna leak over into your normal life. Like now when I'm just like on the whiteboard or thinking of ideas, I use double equals when I'm like, hey, this is the fact. Like pandas equals Google Sheets or Excel, right? So this is how you import pandas, and pandas is pretty much just a package or a module or an app. Some super smart developer built something that we can now use. And that's why coding's so amazing. Is because you just need to figure out what you want to build. For me, it's trading algorithms. I like to trade 24/7, 365 without having to look at the screen. You've been watching my bot down here that's done really well over the past couple weeks, 13% over the last 2 weeks, which is awesome. And I don't even look at the screen. Like I'm here teaching you how to code. And it's over there making me money. So a lot of this code is imports. You can see, let's go through this really quickly. You can see I'm importing this package. I'm importing this package. I'm importing all of these packages. And they're just essentially little apps that people smarter than me built, and then you just import them. So now I want to show you how to use pandas. What I want to do, and since this is like a Google Sheet, I'm going to show you how I use it. Let's go over here. Let's type in Bitcoin price, Yahoo Finance. Okay, let's go ahead and grab the historical data, which is pretty much just data of the Bitcoin price. Let's get it for the max time it will give us. Looks like 2014. I click apply here and I click download. So you can think of this like I use pandas for my accounting, my taxes, pretty much everything you would use Excel for, you can use pandas. And this is the last thing I'm going to teach you in this video training, because then you're going to be set up to really crush it as a developer. And if you want to become an algo trader, I can absolutely help you with that as well, or whatever you want to do. But pandas is super, super powerful. So what I want to do is I want to open this little sidebar up here, and I want to grab that file I just downloaded, and I'm going to paste it in here. Or actually, on the Files tab, it's actually down here. So let me go ahead and pull it in one more time. And I'm going to paste it in right there. And it just says, hey, when you leave this, it's going to be deleted. So I'm showing you how to code on Google because it's super easy. But you actually would code somewhere else usually. And I use Visual Studio Code, which I'll actually get to here at the end of this video. Because I definitely want to show you around there as well. You can see my code right here down in the bottom right. This is a live trading bot that is trading crypto for me 24/7. I'm not using Google Colab for this, but this just takes a few more settings to set up, and I can definitely show you how to do this. Just comment Visual Studio Code below, and I'll show you how to set up all your coding on here for future coding and all that good stuff. you can also join my Algo Trade Camp if you want to see all that. But Visual Studio Code is a free platform. Let's go ahead and just knock this out now. Visual Studio Code, you can download it, and this is where you can edit all of your code, and that's where like you would start coding after you learn. I'm showing you on Google Colab because Google Colab is a super easy way to learn. So what I want to do here now is I want to grab the path. So let's go ahead and say copy path. So I just select BTC USD. I renamed it so it just says BTC USD, and then I click copy path. And then I can close this again by doing that. And since I've already imported pandas as PD, I can say df, and this is just, we're saying a variable. This is a variable, and df is short for data frame. It's just what everybody uses, data frame. And that's like an Excel sheet. So it's just a random name. It could be named anything. And I'm going to say pd.read underscore CSV, and then I'm going to paste in that path. So this is pretty much saying, hey, let's set a variable to this Excel file, and we put the Excel file right here. So we just hit copy path, got the path, and then we're saying, hey, the df equals PD, and remember, we said PD equals pandas. So pandas is this app that allows people to read in pretty much Google Sheets and Excel files and really manipulate data. So I say, hey, use that app, using that app, do this, read the CSV, and this is the link to the CSV with quotes around it. And now if I run it, what do you think is going to happen? Nothing, right? Because I'm not telling it to do anything. I'm just saying, hey, that's the data frame. If I actually want it to do something, I have to say print, because we learned that at the start. So print df. And now you can see I have the date, the open, the high, the low. I can open this up a little bit, the close, the volume, all the data that was in that data frame, just like that. And pandas is one of the, it's for data science. You know, pretty much every coder in the world gets good at pandas, and I don't see many people sharing this information in a beginner's lesson because it's advanced. But the thing is I just showed you how to code. Like, you know how to do it now. And since this is the #1 package or module or app, whatever you want to call it, that I use as an algo trader, and as everybody else who uses data uses this app, I wanted to show you in this intro video because you've made it so far. Like, I know you're going to do so well with coding because you're so persistent and you're already learning advanced stuff. And if you're just coding along with me, you're doing great. So now you can see I set the data frame to that Excel file, and I want to show you some cool things to wrap it up today with that data frame. So we have all of this data here, and I could say, hey, I just want the open, or I just want the high. So how would I do that? Well, let's go ahead and do this in another cell here, and let's go through some of the things I would like to show you with data frames. So you can see the column names, a little hard to read at first. It's become very easy for me to understand, but I look at these all day. These are the column names. So the date, let's just ignore this part because it's kind of confusing. You can see this is the data frame, right? The date is all the dates. Now this is called time series data. Time series data. Time series data is just data over the course of time. So data that changes every day. So for example, the price of a stock or price of Bitcoin, it changes every day. So it's time series data. This is from 2014, 9/17, and this is 9/18/2014, 9/19/2014, 9/20/2014. So every day the data changes. So that's time series data. The reason I'm telling you what time series data is because a lot of coders will refer to data that changes over time to time series data. What else changes over time? Well, like weather, maybe like sporting events, admissions to sporting events, maybe ticket sales, ticket sales, maybe advertising spend, maybe the clicks to a website, and so on and so on. Things change, right? So you can see this is the date column with all the dates, and this is the open price, all the prices as they change over the time series. And you can see it doesn't show the middle section, or else it would have to show 2,917 rows. So it truncates it a bit. It says all the way 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it says ... 2,913. But watch this. What if I wanted the first 50 rows? I could say print, or I could say first 50, whichever way I want to do it. I could say df.head, and I could put 50. And then I could say print first 50. And it's going to show me the first 50 values of that data frame. So it goes from all the way to November from September. But what if I wanted the last 50? So that's the action, print df.head to get the start. But what if I wanted the last 50? Well, I would do df.tail. And then I would just print out here the last 50. Let's mark this out for now. And last 50. This gets me the last 50 values. So that's pretty cool, right? And then you can use the slicing as well. Like I could say print df. I just want position 0 to 100. So similar to that. And let's go ahead and mark this out. And this would give me like the 0 to 100. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then it, truncates it a little bit all the way to 99. So there's a ton of cool things you can do with data frames. And what if I wanted, so this was slicing. What if I wanted to do something else, like another slice? Let's go ahead and say print. What if I just want what if I want the last 10, negative 10 on? Like that. Super simple to do. I would get the last 10, or I could say the last 20 on, because this colon here just says onward. Or I could say the opposite. It's colon. This would take me from 0 all the way to the negative 20th. So there's a ton of stuff you could do with data frames. And again, I want to point you towards Google, because Google will show you everything you ever need to know. So just say how to use data frames in Python, or how to use pandas in Python, and so on and so on. That actually reminds me, I'll write a little note to myself so I don't forget to teach you that as well. Just thought of something that I want to make sure you know. Now, what if I want to see just the date column? Well, I could say print df, and then you say date here. And you can see I just want the data frame of the date. So what happens if I hit that? It's only going to get me the date column. What if I just want the close column? Print df close. And it only gets me the close column, which is pretty awesome, right? So you can see I've been doing this a lot as well, where I'm just wrapping something into a print, but I could also save this to a variable. I could say, let's delete this, or let's keep it there. Let's just mark it out. And I could say close df. Remember, df is just a shortening for data frame. I could say close df equals df.close, or df at the close period, so brackets, parentheses, close. And then I could say print close df, like this. And it will give me the same value. So that, doing this right here, is pretty much the same as this, except this that's highlighted is not going to save it as closed df. So like now, since I've already saved it as close df, I could say print close df at the last position like that, -1, and it should just give me 1. Well, it doesn't, because it's a different format. This is pandas. And the reason I wanted to show you that is because intuitively, from what you've learned thus far, this would make sense and this would print. But since this is pandas, it works a little differently. So what I want to do is go to the final section of this training where I'm going to show you how to use pandas at like an advanced level. Now, again, if this doesn't make sense, don't worry, just write it down, code it with me, and do it over and over again, and it will eventually make sense. And then do your own research as well. So I want to show you how to access where one column, what do we want to start with? Let's start with this. I'm going to go ahead and say this. How to access a value out of one column. So you saw I just tried to show you the last position, and in pandas, it's actually more difficult. But you have to just remember it, and or you actually don't have to remember it. I don't even remember this. I just Google it every time. What I can say here is, we have this data frame, right? So if we scroll up here, we've got this data frame and it's all this data, okay? And it's called DF. So we know that. That's the truth. But if I wanted to say DF2 equals only where, let's go ahead and write it and then I'll explain it, because this is some intense code here. So we're gonna make a second data frame where DF, and we're doing .loc, so where the location is on the DF, where the close is greater than, let's say, 40,000. So what we're asking for here is we want to see where the close is bigger than 40,000, and we'll set that to DF 40K. So essentially we're making a new data frame and calling it DF 40K, and where the data frame location, and then we say in the close, where the close is bigger than 40,000, we'll make that the new DF. It might not make sense. It did not make sense to me at the start, but don't worry, just practice, 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 and it will. So DF 40K, let's print that out, spell it correctly, and print. And it gives me the data frame where the close amount is higher than 40,000. So you can see the close amount is 40,797, 40,254, 46,000, and so on. And you can see the dates are different, like the first, or the January 8th, and then jumps to February 8th. So it's only giving me the data frame where it's over 40K. Now, what if I said under 40K? You can see the close column is 457, 424, and so on and so on. You can also use, like, if it's not equal to 40K, which should be most of them, right? So that's how you use pandas in order to get a certain column based off of a condition. Build a new data frame based off a condition. And don't worry if this is super confusing for you. I actually have a video just on pandas data frames, but I wanted to show you this to start, to get your feet wet in some like expert level coding. Now, if this makes any sense to you at all, you are super advanced already, because this took me months on months to understand. But at the end of the day, every time you get stuck and every time I got stuck, I would just say, hey, how do I do this in pandas? And then I would just read what other people said, and then boom, you understand it eventually, right? You just do it over and over again. And to be honest, to this day, I still code and I still use Google. I don't memorize things. Memorization is going to come with time, years and years, but it's not needed. We have Google. We're professional Googlers. That's all we're doing is professional Googling. So I want to show you one more thing. Since you've gone this far, I want to show you one more advanced thing, how to get a specific value out of a data frame. So pretty much, I want to see where, how should we do this? Let's go ahead and write it first, and then I'll explain it. I think that's a better way to do it. So let's say df3 equals df.loc, and say df where the close equals, let's see if we can grab a number here just so we can be perfect. 398.24. So if we for some reason wanted this, we wanted where the close equals that exact number, just to show you how this works. Then we want the date. We want the date. So where it shows this number here, we want this date. So how the heck do you get that? Well, I'm showing you how to do that. So essentially this is saying, hey, df.loc, whatever that means, it's saying use that function they built for us. df.loc, where df close equals this exact number, I want the date. I want that. And I want that to be called date of 398 or whatever. And then all I do is I say dot values and I hit 0. And then what's going to happen here? I hit play and nothing happens. Why? Let's go back to step 1, because I didn't put the print. So if you don't put the print, nothing happens. If you got anything out of this, at least you know how to print, right? And now I hit print and it shows me that date. Why? Because I said, hey, where the df close equals this number. So if I look at the data frame and I see that number right here, well, where that is true, I want the date column. And it gives me this date right here, 2014, 9/21. So that's kind of advanced. I have a 30-minute video just on pandas. Definitely go watch that. I'll make sure to put that below as well. But now I just want to tell you a couple more things before we wrap up here. The first thing is tap that like button if you haven't already, because I just showed you exactly how to code, and now you are on your way to the, this is how the people that work at Stripe and get paid $237,000 a year. They're entry-level people. That means this is like their first couple years. They're level 1. They're making $237. That's quite nice, right? They learned all this stuff you just learned today, but they just kept going. So now you have the fundamentals. I would highly recommend watching this video again, using your own values this time. So when I put in something like a sentence, use a different sentence. Or if I make a function named, moon, use a different function name or whatever, because that will really help you learn. So I highly recommend watching this video again if you have the time. If you don't have the time, there is one book that I recommend, and that is on Amazon. And I'm not affiliated with this book at all or anything that I've taught you today. I think it's like Python. What is it? Not for Dummies. Oh, Learn Python the Hard Way. This book was recommended to me when I first got started, and it will teach you absolutely everything you need to learn about Python. If you're one of those people that want to learn absolutely everything, this is everything in there. What I showed you today is, in my opinion, everything. Like, I went through all my bots, all my trading algorithms for the last few years, and I taught you everything you need to know. So like you're good to go and start building from here and start Googling. But if you want to know like the little fine details, this is a really good book to have. And, you know, even if you don't read the whole book, it's good to just have at your house, and you can, you know, fly through it and just see things when you need it. But at the same time, you also have Google. So if you don't want a book, I just wanted to recommend something, somewhere to go from here. If you want to learn more about Python, this is a really good way to learn. But in my opinion, one of the best ways is just when you get stuck, just go start building something. If you want to join me in the Algo Trade Camp, feel free to. I teach you exactly how to turn your strategy, your trading strategy, into an algorithmic trading bot using the stuff you learned today. Sure, it's a little more in depth, but it's all of the same fundamentals. So you're really good to go build whatever you want to build. And now you know that coding is really only intimidating because there's big words being used, right? So once you understand the vocab and understand how to Google things, you can do anything because all the answers are online, and it's really amazing. The other thing I want you to do is download Visual Studio Code. This is the code editor that I personally use. If you need help or anything setting that up, let me know in the comment section. I can definitely help with that. It's not too hard at all. There's a ton of videos as well online. Like I said, go watch that other 30-minute pandas video. 30-minute pandas video. I think this is the #1 package for Python. So meaning like it's the #1 used app pretty much for Python is pandas. So if you get really good at that, you'll be able to get like, you know, every single job that you would ever want is going to use pandas. So definitely get good at that. And then the last thing I want to talk about before I let you go here on your own is typing in pandas documentation. So whenever you import something, that's like I said, it's like an app that you import. Some smart person, some developer put it together, and then you can go ahead and use it forever. Well, if you ever have questions, a good way to understand what you're using is just read the documentation. Now, I will warn you, this is ugly looking, right? It's all just like a bunch of text. But if you read the documentation, like 10 minutes to pandas, you can learn pandas in 10 minutes. That's what they say. I mean, it's not too hard. It's all written here. It's really ugly in my opinion. Just looking at code is so hard for the eyes and it's really intimidating. But just read it. It's all in English and it will tell you everything. So you can just go to the pandas documentation and learn absolutely everything. I know a lot of people that will learn how to code just based off of documentation. Look at this, Python documentation. If you want to go deeper in Python and you don't want to, you know, buy a book or something, look at this. It's a what's new in Python 10 tutorials. It shows you absolutely everything. Everything you need to know is inside of the documentation. And the reason I wanted to talk about documentation is because you're going to read, like when you Google stuff, people are going to be like, check the documentation. Like they're not going to want to, like some people won't answer. They'll just be like, it's in the docs. And it's like, I have to go read these docs. Well, if you like reading, literally all the answers are in documentation. So definitely, if you have time, this will take a long time to read, but go through the Python documentation, even if you're just skimming through it. See, like you can read more about strings that we learned today. You can learn pretty much everything because Python is, again, pretty much just a way to code, and it's a language, and everything is on like for statements and even stuff I didn't teach today. It's all in the documentation. So if you really, really want to dive deep and get to know libraries like pandas, you can just always type in pandas documentation or Python documentation. The world is yours. You now have the world unlocked, and I'm so excited because my mission is to help as many people code, because I truly believe coding is the great equalizer. You know, I grew up in the US, which is still to this day quite segregated, and as a mixed race person, I've seen it myself that not everybody is treated the same. Is that right? Of course it's not right. But is it truth? I think so. I've lived, 30 plus years now, and I still see it to this day. But guess what? It doesn't matter what your color is, where you're from, where in the world. If you know how to code, you know something 99.9% of people don't know. And if these companies are hiring people who know how to code, well, they don't have many people to hire. So it doesn't matter where you're from. It doesn't matter, how much money you have, what type of family you come from, what color your skin is, what language you speak. If you know the language of coding, guess what? That's all that matters. It's a Boolean. It's a Boolean. Remember, a Boolean is true or false. Do you know coding? Yes or no? Is it true? Do you know how to code now? Yes, it's true now. You just watched this long video, exactly how to code step by step here on YouTube. I really hope you take what you've learned today and build something amazing. I have the chills right now. I'm so excited that I was finally able to put this full video together so you can watch it as many times as you need to. Let's do a brief review of everything we've learned today, and then I'm going to let you go. And all I ask is just go ahead and join us. Like, click this link here on Algo Trade Camp because it sends you to a Discord chat. You don't have to buy anything, but I would love to hear your results someday. What did you end up coding? Like I said, you can get into our group here by going to algotradecamp.com. Again, you don't have to buy anything. It's going to direct you to our Discord. And I'm just excited for you because you're so motivated. Like, you're so persistent. You're so perfect for coding because you made it through this whole video. So today we learned how to code in Python for 2023 and beyond, really. So forever, you're going to know how to code. You can pick up any language you want to code now. Today we went over, how to print things, what Booleans are, numbers in Python, the different types of numbers, how to count in Python, how to import things, packages, modules, how to use the operators, how to do math in Python, what sentences or strings are, how to slice things. You've done so much today. I'm so proud of you. What variables are. They're just boxes to store stuff. And lists, they're just like a bunch of stuff that you're storing, right? So you know what dictionaries are. You know all this stuff. We absolutely killed it today. You learned how, to use if statements, elif statements, else statements. And I'm here for you. If you ever have any questions, just let me know because I want to empower the world. As long as you know how to use YouTube or TikTok, you can code. That's why I'm so passionate about this. You learn indexing, loops, while loops, and for loops. And most importantly, you learn that this is not for some genius person. Like, as long as you can Google, you can do great with coding. Just learn these core concepts that I taught today. You learn functions, how to return functions, how to get a piece of the function, how to go ahead and pass things into a function. Any part that you have questions on, just Google it and just learn more and read more about all of these things I've taught you today. I've taught you everything you need to know, plus some. I even taught you some pandas, which is almost another language on top of Python. So go ahead and take what you've learned today. Ask any questions you do have in the comment section. I have that Discord that you can get to by going to Algo Trade Camp or clicking the link below. It's going to point you to the Discord at some point. Just go through that funnel if you do want to connect. Hey, if you don't want to connect, my mission is to help as many people in the world learn how to code for free here on YouTube. And if you're at this point of the video, I've already done that for you. So I just wish you the best. I hope you get absolutely everything in this life that you've ever wanted. And don't let anybody ever tell you you can't do something. I know that's cliche, but I'm that kid where all the teachers were like, you're going to amount to nothing. All my coaches were like, you better focus on this or else you're going to end up poor and you're not going to be able to pay your bills and whatnot. And it's just like, if I would have listened to those people like my friends did, I would not be where I am today. And I'm just so thankful. I'm so thankful to be in the position to be able to teach you how to code. And yeah, I really appreciate your time today. I'm so excited for you. I'm so excited for you. Please do stay in touch. I hope you have a wonderful day. And if we don't speak again, I just really hope you get everything you ever wanted in this life. And just know for a fact, I believe in you. You can do whatever you want. Just keep going, keep swimming. You'll get to where you want to go. That's all I got for today. My name is Moondev. Hopefully I'll see you in Discord. Have an amazing day.